Welcome back, everybody. Jaysin Static with another episode of the interview series. I'm Jaysin Static. You, sir, are
EagleEye.
How long have you been in the wrestling industry?
Almost 2 years now.
2 years. You're a Fight Club crew guy, so you know this deal. I've got new questions for you. You don't know these questions. I got a new way of doing things. 2 videos instead of 1. That way we have more time to promote shit. And are you ready for your first question?
Let's go.
If you could change one thing about the professional wrestling industry, what would it be and why?
Well, depending on how far in depth we go here.
As far as you want.
I think that maybe the style of pro wrestling.
Okay.
I know there's different types of styles all over and different promotions all over the country, the whole world actually. But I really prefer that kind of like 80s, 90s wrestling where it was raw, it was authentic. It felt more
realistic,
less choreographed.
Uh-huh.
And I think that kind of style always really reached out to me more because it was like, you never knew, or you might have, but you always questioned it. Was that real? Was it not real?
Right.
And I prefer that type of hard hitting type of action more so than the choreographed things that we've got going on now. It's not necessarily a bad thing at all. I mean, that's the time we're living in. This is the new era, but that's my preference. I prefer a more in-depth of raw, authentic wrestling where you don't have to do as much, where you can go out there and hit people with all these types of moves. And it was more about like the selling and the story behind it more so than, hey, let's move on to this next move and do all these flashy things. It's personally speaking, I'm a heftier kind of guy. It's hard to keep up with all these guys trying to do that.
Right.
And that's as honest as I can be about it. I try to keep up with the style, but it's hard, because I'm more of a guy that gets in there and hard hits. I don't hit as much. I don't do as much as everyone else, but when I do, it's enough, and that's the way I prefer my style of wrestling.
Now, do you think, like you said, you don't think it's a bad thing that it's more choreographed, but you like something a little bit more grounded, based in reality, a little bit more selling, a little bit more story oriented. Could you say?
Yeah, I like the stories more. I think when I look back in time, it almost feels like a lost art of just going out there and being true to yourself. And it's hard to learn that type of style now that more of those vets that were in that time period are going away. They're retiring. They're passing. God bless.
Right.
But it's just one of those things that I feel like that should be a style that's worked more into, but it doesn't really cater to the new era of where everybody wants to see all these flashy, flippy, indie super moves, and it's hard to balance that and appeal to everyone. So I understand the fans and how they love all the flippy stuff and all the choreographed crazy moves, because it really is crazy. It's it's truly a work of art, but it's just not my art.
Do you think that the style that you like, that 80s 90s style, translates into that today? Do you think the fans, I mean, you just said it, you think the fans are geared towards the super indie style, but do you think the fans actually still like that old school style?
Yeah, for sure. If you look at today's product and specifically WWE, because if you're not a fan, if you can't really truly tell the difference, that AEW is more oriented towards the super indie style and WWE is towards the more cinematic storytelling.
Right.
And I think when you look back, like Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns, just as an example, was a heavily story-based match where they didn't do a whole lot of crazy things. It's just the way they sold. It's the way they told their story. Just like one of my favorite matches, Triple H versus Undertaker, WrestleMania 28. You built that story up for 4 years. but you didn't see those guys go and doing like 720s or anything ridiculous like that.
Right.
And I'm not saying, again, I have to reiterate this so this doesn't get like spun out of control. It's not a bad style. It's totally the new thing, and it's what we're living in. So we have to
Learn to adapt.
Just like Triple H said, I want to say like a couple weeks ago, it's just the style. We might love the past, but we have to adapt to this new style.
Exactly.
And I respect that and I understand that. But when I look back at like the WWE days of Triple H versus Undertaker, or even one of my other ones, it was Rock versus Cena. That buildup was insane. And those guys didn't do anything crazy. It's just, it was the story, and the story was being told, and it was real. They had real beef. It was authentic. It felt more of a true pay-per-view type of like, this is what I want to get invested in,
Right.
And that's how I like my wrestling, because I love the buildup of the stories you look back on.
So do you think that 80s 90s style is more geared towards pulling on those emotional heartstrings than today is?
Yeah. I think that back then, like especially during the 90s, you had like the Iron Sheik coming in, and you had Sergeant Slaughter turning heel and siding with Iron Sheik during a very controversial time,
Right.
where Sergeant Slaughter was getting death threats. That's how real wrestling was. That's how real and authentic it felt. And it's just making me smile, because it's just like, that's what I love. I love when people do that and people get real and authentic, because then when the crowds come together to come see this mega blockbuster event, you're getting your money's worth, because it's gonna be real. And we just had that not too long ago with Lenny Mephisto and Gary J. That was real beef. Those guys really hated each other, and they went out there and beat the hell out of each other, and it was awesome, and everybody benefited. That's a style of wrestling match that I prefer, because it tugs more to the heart when you look and your favorite heroes and your favorite villains are duking it out in these types of stories, rather than like, and no offense, like maybe AEW, when you booked Ricochet versus Will Ospreay, two incredible athletes that aren't really going to be outworked in the way that they do their things. But you didn't build it up, you just threw it out there because you signed them, and it sucks to see that, because fans are more oriented towards a story, and if you can hook them on a story, then you can do all the crazy moves and get away with it. It's fine. But there was no story, and that's the thing that I see a lot nowadays, is that we're lacking story and not so much.
Is that specifically in indie wrestling?
I think that that's everywhere. I think that, WWE is clearly rocking it with their cinematic stuff that they've been doing. And I think that AEW really does cater towards the indie, not really telling a story. And people could tell me I'm wrong, and they might be right, but like, it's hard to compare. And even on indie shows, it's almost like there's no real story unless you have guys that consistently go there and you build those stories up and you make it make sense. And sometimes companies don't make it make sense, and so people aren't as invested in it. And
so do you think that's why the super indie crowd is gear oriented towards that super sequences, super high flying, and huge impactful type stuff?
Yeah, for sure. I think with the lack of story, they gear towards, we want to see these crazy moves instead, then, because if you're not going to give us a story, then we want to see action. And if you're going to give us the action, then we're gonna settle and be content with what we got.
Right. All right, man. You got anything to promote? Upcoming shows, merchandise, websites, social media sites, anything like that? Upcoming matches?
Always follow me on _EagleEye on Instagram, EagleEye on Facebook. That's my two big ones. And February 1st at the Salem Community Center, I will be wrestling the Modern Man, one of my good friends, good brother, Calvin Coco. No, nothing personal, but I got to go after it because I got the Powerhouse Championship on the line against him. So it's all good.
All right, man. We're going to do it just like we always do it. Jaysin Static across all social media. Fight Club Wrestling Academy across all social media. And I do have merchandise stuff coming. I'm not going to tell you where it's coming, but it's coming. I have a new concept, a new idea that I'm working on. and it's just a matter of time before I start dropping those real hints. EagleEye knows what it is.
Oh boy.
But you guys don't. All right, guys. Peace out. Much love.